My phone vibrated during an afternoon meeting at the construction site, and at first, I considered ignoring it. But when I saw Emma's name on the screen, I felt a sudden urge to answer. My 16-year-old daughter was crying so hard that her words were difficult to make out over the background noise and interference. She kept repeating something about Aunt Tracy and her new Honda Civic, the car Emma had worked for over 2 years at Scoop's Ice Cream to buy with her own savings. Then she said something that made my heart stop. Tracy had crashed the car into an oak tree on Maple Street and told the police that Emma had been driving. My parents were standing nearby, supporting everything Tracy told the officers. Emma was about to be arrested for reckless driving and insurance fraud. Despite being only 16, I dropped my hard hat and rushed to my truck, leaving my foreman Dave behind with blueprints still in his hands. The drive to Maple Street felt endless, even though it only took 12 minutes through downtown traffic. When I arrived, my stomach sank. Emma's silver Honda Civic was wrapped tightly around the oak tree, completely crushed, with steam still rising from the damaged engine. Officer Rodriguez was speaking with Emma near his patrol car, quickly writing notes as she shook her head repeatedly, clearly distressed. Tracy stood about 15 feet away, pressing a tissue against a bandaged cut on her forehead while crying openly. I immediately recognized her behavior. She had perfected that expression years ago. Growing up, whenever she broke something and needed our parents to believe it was accidental, she used the same performance. Tracy was explaining the situation to Officer Martinez, the second officer on the scene. She claimed that Emma had asked to drive to the store, insisted she was capable, and appeared confident. Tracy said she should have refused, but didn't. According to her, Emma began speeding, ignored warnings to slow down, and when Tracy tried to help by grabbing the steering wheel, the car hit the tree. She repeatedly said she felt responsible for not stopping it sooner. Behind her, my parents, Robert and Linda, stood firmly in support. My father nodded seriously with each statement, while my mother clutched her purse and wiped her eyes with a tissue. They had arrived quickly from their house on Elm Street, only a few blocks away, after Tracy called them instead of emergency services. Emma noticed me and ran over, her face red and swollen from crying. She told me clearly that she was not driving. She explained that Tracy had taken the keys from the kitchen while Emma was upstairs doing homework, saying she would be gone for 20 minutes. Emma heard the crash from her bedroom window and ran outside to find Tracy already on the phone, claiming Emma was responsible. I knelt to look closely at my daughter's face, searching for any sign that she wasn't telling the truth. But I knew her well. Emma had never lied to me about anything important. She always admitted mistakes, even minor ones, before being confronted. Officer Rodriguez approached with his clipboard and asked for my information regarding the vehicle and insurance. He stated that Emma would be cited for reckless driving and possibly charged for operating a vehicle without proper supervision. I stopped him and asked for clarification. He confirmed that Tracy had given a detailed account blaming Emma for the crash. I walked toward the car, trying to understand what didn't feel right. The driver's seat was pushed far back, adjusted for someone taller than Emma. My daughter is 5 feet 2 inches, while Tracy is 5 feet 8 inches. Whenever Emma drove, she always had to move the seat forward and adjust the mirrors. Emma quietly pointed this out to me as I returned. Before I could raise the issue, my father asked to speak with me privately. His tone was the same one he had used throughout my childhood, signaling that compliance was expected. We moved away from the scene, and he lowered his voice. He told me that Tracy owed a large amount of money to dangerous people, and that her arrest would expose financial decisions my parents had made to help her. Decisions that could result in serious trouble with the IRS. He explained that Tracy had borrowed $47,000 from their retirement fund due to gambling debts, and that they had falsified business expenses through Sunset Lawn Care to replace the money. If Tracy were charged, she would likely reveal everything to avoid jail. I was stunned. He was asking me to allow my daughter to take the blame to protect them from tax evasion charges. He insisted that it was best for the family overall and minimize the consequences for Emma, saying it would likely result in a citation and community service. He framed it as a choice between one teenager's driving record and the potential destruction of 3 adult lives. I looked back at Emma, who was watching us with visible fear. Officer Rodriguez continued preparing the paperwork. Tracy remained emotional, with my mother reassuring her that accidents happen, especially with young drivers. In that moment, I understood how corruption often begins, not with malicious intent, but with small compromises made to protect personal interests over truth. I returned to Officer Rodriguez and made a decision that weighed heavily on me. I acknowledged Emma's inexperience and thanked him for handling the situation professionally. Emma looked at me in disbelief as the citation was handed to her. She questioned why I wasn't telling the truth. I quietly told her to trust me and not speak further, assuring her that I had a plan. Still, I could see her confidence in me weaken. After the police left and everyone dispersed, I drove Emma home in silence. She stared out the window, holding the citation tightly. When we reached our house on Oakage Court, she finally asked why I hadn't defended her. I told her that some situations are more complex than they appear, and that I intended to make things right carefully, not emotionally. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down everything I remembered. The seat position, inconsistencies in Tracy's story, and the fact that she contacted my parents before emergency services. Later, I returned to the crash site and searched the area with my phone's flashlight. I found Tracy's prescription sunglasses in the grass on the driver's side impact zone, intact, suggesting she had been driving. The next morning, I called in sick and went to Emma's bank. Reviewing her statements revealed 8 unauthorized withdrawals totaling $3,200, all occurring during school hours at locations Tracy frequented. Nearly half of Emma's college savings had been taken. At home, I confirmed that Emma's debit card was still in her possession, meaning Tracy had obtained the PIN. The only people who knew it were my parents, who had helped set up the account years earlier. That afternoon, I explained everything to Emma, showing her the bank records. She processed the information slowly, realizing that Tracy had been stealing from her for months. I told her that I believed the crash was caused by Tracy's distraction and that blaming Emma was a calculated decision, knowing the family would support her. Emma asked if we should go to the police. I explained that moving too quickly could backfire and that we needed undeniable proof. I also explained the situation involving her grandparents and the legal trouble they faced. Emma expressed that she didn't want them jailed, but also didn't want to be blamed for something she didn't do. She then told me that classmates had already started talking about her reckless driving citation. My friend Katie told me that her mother had heard people saying I was a spoiled teenager who did not appreciate the expensive things my family provided for me. I told her that perception would change, but we needed to be calm and strategic about how we handled the situation. I explained that I would reach out to professionals who knew how to collect evidence properly. Until then, I asked her to change her PIN immediately, keep her debit card with her at all times, and inform me right away if Tracy contacted her for any reason. That night, I began researching criminal defense attorneys in our area and came across Marcus Williams, a lawyer who focused on insurance fraud. His website noted experience with financial crimes involving family members, which matched our situation closely. I scheduled a consultation for the next day. Before going to bed, I passed Emma's room and heard her talking on the phone with her best friend Katie, explaining what had really happened. She said she could not understand how someone could act loving while stealing at the same time, and admitted that it made her question her ability to judge people. Hearing my daughter struggle with that level of betrayal at such a young age strengthened my resolve to follow this through. Tracy had not only taken money and caused a crash, she had taken away Emma's sense of security within her own family, and that was something I could neither forgive nor overlook. The meeting with Marcus Williams took place in his office on 2nd Street, located in a converted Victorian home with worn wooden floors and walls filled with law books. Marcus, a thin man in his 40s with early gray hair and sharp green eyes, listened closely as I explained everything. After I finished, he said that fraud involving a minor was a serious felony and that if convicted, my sister could face up to 5 years in prison along with significant fines. He explained that the difficulty was the number of witnesses supporting her version of events, including my parents. To build a solid case, we would need evidence that directly contradicted their statements in ways that could not be explained by simple confusion or memory errors. When I asked what kind of proof would be required, Marcus listed phone records showing distraction while driving, bank records confirming the theft from Emma's account, physical evidence from the crash scene that conflicted with Tracy's story, and ideally, some form of admission that showed intent to deceive. He then referred me to Detective Ray Morrison, a retired police investigator who now worked as a private detective specializing in financial crimes. Ray operated out of a small office above Miller's hardware store, and when I met him the next morning, his organized and methodical approach immediately stood out. He explained that the first step was to establish a pattern of behavior. If Tracy had done this before, there would be records, especially since insurance companies track and share information about suspicious claims. Ray's early findings were alarming. Over the past 2 years, Tracy had been involved in 4 separate insurance claims involving teenage drivers. In every case, she gave statements placing fault on the teenager, and each incident resulted in sizable settlements for the families involved. During our second meeting, Ray told me this strongly suggested a planned operation. He believed Tracy targeted families with teenage drivers and valuable cars, created situations where accidents could occur, and then blamed the teenagers while presenting herself as the responsible adult trying to help. Families supported her version of events because she appeared trustworthy. At the same time, I installed wireless security cameras around our house that would alert my phone if someone entered the property while I was at work. I also replaced all the door locks and made sure Emma understood never to allow Tracy access to the house. The cameras proved useful sooner than expected. 3 days after installation, I received an alert while at a construction site. The footage showed Tracy entering our backyard and attempting to unlock the back door with a key. When that failed, she tried the front door and then tested several windows before leaving. That evening, I asked Emma if she had ever given Tracy a key. She said no, but reminded me that last winter, when I was sick with the flu, Tracy had offered to bring soup and medicine. I had asked Emma to hide the spare key under a flower pot so Tracy could enter quietly. We realized Tracy may have made a copy at that time. The understanding that she had likely been entering our home for months made us feel deeply violated. She had been studying our routines, photographing documents, and planning her actions while we trusted her completely. Ray's investigation uncovered even more serious issues. Using Tracy's personal information, he discovered that she had opened 3 credit cards using Emma's identity. The applications listed Emma's income as $12,000 a year from restaurant work, close enough to her real ice cream shop wages to avoid automatic verification. Tracy had maxed out all 3 cards with cash advances totaling $8,900. The money went toward gambling debts, as well as designer clothing, expensive meals, and frequent spa visits that our family assumed she could afford. Ray explained that Emma was now legally responsible for nearly $9,000 in debt she never approved until the fraud was proven. The debt would damage her credit and could affect her ability to secure student loans. I felt overwhelming anger, realizing that Tracy had not only blamed Emma for a crash, but had also undermined her financial future while pretending to be a caring aunt. The situation escalated when Tracy filed a restraining order against me, claiming I had harassed and threatened her since the accident. She included a statement from our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who said she had heard me yelling threats through the thin wall between our homes. Mrs. Kowalski was 82 and had hearing difficulties, but Tracy convinced her that raised voices she heard were threats rather than work-related phone calls or rehearsed presentations. The restraining order prevented direct contact with Tracy, complicating the investigation, but it also showed how desperate she had become. Filing false legal documents suggested she knew her story was falling apart and wanted protection from the consequences. Emma's emotional condition continued to worsen. She quit her job at Scoop's Ice Cream because she could not handle customers' sympathetic looks after hearing rumors about her driving. Her grades dropped sharply as stress and fear consumed her focus. She told me that people at school treated her differently, including teachers. One even suggested counseling for risk-taking behavior. I wanted to explain the truth, but knew it would not be believed. Watching my daughter suffer for actions she did not commit was the hardest experience of my life. Still, I understood that acting too quickly without solid proof would only strengthen Tracy's false narrative. We had to remain patient and precise, even though waiting was painful. A local newspaper published a brief article about the accident, with a headline suggesting reckless teenage driving. Tracy was quoted extensively, speaking about irresponsible teens receiving expensive cars too early. Reading her statements, knowing what she had done, made it clear that she felt no guilt about destroying a child's reputation to protect herself. Ray reminded me that people like Tracy often make mistakes when they feel cornered. The restraining order was a sign she was panicking and trying to control the story before evidence surfaced. The next discovery changed everything. Through federal law enforcement contacts, Ray learned that Tracy's gambling debts were tied to Eduardo Torres, who ran a money laundering operation through businesses posing as massage parlors. Ray explained that Tracy was acting as a recruiter, identifying families with clean credit who could unknowingly participate in financial crimes. Torres paid Tracy $2,000 per month to recruit family members. My parents' lawn care business had been processing fake invoices, unknowingly laundering illegal funds. The income they reported that year came entirely from Torres's operation. Ray explained that my parents believed they were helping Tracy with gambling debts, but were actually laundering money tied to serious criminal activity. When I asked what would happen to my parents, Ray said full cooperation could lead to plea agreements involving probation rather than prison. Continuing to lie, however, would result in federal conspiracy charges. Ray also revealed that insurance fraud investigations had expanded across multiple states. Similar accidents involving teenage relatives and Tracy as the key adult witness appeared in several regions. He believed she had been running this scheme for at least 3 years. With this information, we decided to set a controlled trap to expose Tracy's planning process. Working with Ray and Marcus Williams, we created a false scenario designed to prompt her involvement. I contacted my cousin Danny, who owned a restored 1967 Mustang. Though we were not close, he agreed to help after hearing what happened to Emma. Danny casually contacted Tracy, expressing concern about Emma being around his classic car during upcoming family gatherings. He mentioned her supposed reckless driving and implied that having such a valuable vehicle nearby made him uneasy, setting the stage for Tracy to reveal her intentions. Tracy's reaction was swift and revealing. She immediately offered to speak with Emma about being more cautious around expensive vehicles and asked pointed questions about Danny's insurance coverage. In particular, she wanted to know whether he would be willing to assist family members if something unfortunate happened to his car while Emma was nearby. According to Morrison, who reviewed the recorded conversation with me, she was already laying the groundwork for her next move. Her objective was to portray Emma as someone who repeatedly caused damage and could not be trusted around valuable cars, which would make any future accusations appear more believable. At the same time, the federal investigation was advancing rapidly. Eduardo Torres had been arrested during an unrelated DEA raid connected to his massage parlor operation. Facing life imprisonment on trafficking charges, he began cooperating with federal prosecutors almost immediately, including spreadsheets that showed payments to Sunset Lawn Care and outlined Tracy's role as a family recruiter. According to those records, Tracy earned approximately $31,000 over an 18-month period by identifying and manipulating 12 different families across the region. FBI agent Sarah Castellanos contacted me directly to discuss the investigation. Meeting her at the federal building downtown felt unreal. More like walking into a television crime show than living my own life. In her sterile conference room, Agent Castellanos explained that Tracy had been a valuable asset to Torres's operation. She described Tracy as highly skilled at identifying potential targets and gaining their trust quickly. Her method involved approaching families during periods of emotional or financial stress when they were most vulnerable. Agent Castellanos showed me photographs of other families Tracy had targeted. These included a single mother in Ohio whose son was blamed for crashing into a storefront, and a divorced father in Pennsylvania whose daughter was accused of damaging a neighbor's fence with her car. In every case, Tracy positioned herself as the concerned family friend who had witnessed teenage recklessness. The families defended her because they believed she was helping to reduce consequences for their children. What they did not know was that she had deliberately caused the accidents and was collecting money both from insurance settlements and from Torres for her involvement. Learning about these other victims made it clear that what happened to Emma was not personal or rooted in family conflict. Tracy was a professional criminal who had selected our family as part of a calculated business operation. Agent Castellanos emphasized that Tracy's actions were neither emotional nor impulsive. She had spent months studying our routines, finances, and weaknesses before staging the car accident. Emma was chosen deliberately because teenagers are easier to discredit and less likely to be believed when they insist they are innocent. The FBI had been building a case against Torres and his network for 2 years, but they needed Tracy's cooperation to prosecute the higher-level operators controlling the trafficking and laundering activities. However, Tracy's restraining order and her continued false claims about the accident indicated she intended to fight the charges rather than cooperate. Agent Castellanos explained that Emma's case was critical. If investigators could prove Tracy deliberately caused the accident and falsely blamed Emma, it would establish a pattern of criminal behavior against family members and strengthen the broader case against the entire network. I began to understand that Emma's determination to defend herself was about more than clearing her name. Her honesty was helping expose a criminal organization that had harmed many families and would continue doing so if Tracy were not stopped. At the same time, I recognized that Tracy, now facing decades in federal prison, would likely become more desperate as the investigation closed in. Desperation makes criminals unpredictable, and my primary concern became keeping Emma safe while building the case needed to bring accountability. Agent Castellanos and Detective Morrison worked together to design a detailed sting operation intended to catch Tracy planning her next move. Using federal surveillance tools, they monitored her phone calls and tracked her movements as she began researching Emma's daily schedule and looking for opportunities to stage another incident. The breakthrough came when Tracy contacted 3 local auto body shops, requesting estimates for repairing damage to a teenager's car that had not yet been damaged. She provided exact details about paint color and model year that matched Danny's Mustang, strongly suggesting she intended to cause damage, and then claim Emma had crashed the car without permission. Morrison explained during a strategy meeting at Marcus Williams' law office that Tracy was preparing to escalate her accusations. If she could portray Emma as a repeat offender who stole cars and wrecked them, it would make her original story appear far more credible. However, her plan required Emma to have access to Danny's car, meaning Tracy needed to engineer a situation where Emma would be alone with the vehicle. Investigators decided to give Tracy what she wanted, but under carefully controlled conditions. Danny agreed to visit our house for a family barbecue and parked his Mustang in the driveway, where Tracy could see it from across the street. We invited Tracy through our parents, expecting her to decline, but knowing she would still observe the property. Hidden cameras captured her driving past our house 4 times during the event, stopping each time to photograph the car and study the driveway layout. Phone surveillance later recorded her telling an unidentified contact that the setup was ideal and that Emma would have access the following morning after adults left for work. Even more damaging was Tracy's call to her insurance company. She asked about expanding her coverage to include occasional driving of family members' vintage vehicles. She specifically questioned coverage limits for classic cars and whether her policy would protect her if an inexperienced driver caused damage under her supervision. Agent Castellanos noted that Tracy was creating a paper trail to make it appear she was acting responsibly. In reality, she was setting up another insurance fraud scheme involving damage she planned to cause herself. Throughout the ordeal, Emma's composure and integrity continued to stand out. Despite the stress of false accusations and damage to her reputation, she remained firm in telling the truth and refused any compromise that would allow Tracy to avoid consequences. She told Agent Castellanos that preventing other children from going through the same experience mattered more than resolving her own situation quickly. Emma's maturity and clarity contrasted sharply with Tracy's dissection, and watching my daughter choose honesty under pressure made me deeply proud. The federal case reached a critical point when Eduardo Torres provided recorded phone conversations between himself and Tracy discussing specific details of the scheme. In one recording, Tracy describes selecting Emma's car because of its strong insurance coverage, emotional value to the family, and the likelihood that a teenager would not be believed over an adult. In another, she explained her method for causing accidents that would appear to be driver error, describing how she waited for distractions before forcing the steering wheel, and later claiming she tried to help. These recordings gave prosecutors direct evidence of criminal intent and showed that Emma's case was part of a refined method Tracy had been developing over time. As the investigation narrowed in on her, Tracy became increasingly frantic. Surveillance revealed her contacting a bail bondsman and researching rapid international travel. More concerning, she began asking questions about Emma's daily schedule, raising fears of direct interference. Agent Castellanos warned that Emma was the key witness contradicting Tracy's story, and that any attempt to intimidate or remove her would significantly strengthen Tracy's defense. Emma was placed under federal protection with unmarked agents monitoring her movements. Our home received additional security measures, and Emma was given an emergency contact number to reach Agent Castellanos directly. This protection proved necessary when Tracy attempted her most desperate move. Claiming there was a family emergency, she contacted Emma at school and urged her to leave immediately, saying I had been injured in a construction accident. Remembering my guidance about verifying emergencies, Emma contacted Agent Castellanos instead. Federal agents quickly tracked Tracy and found she was not heading to any hospital, but driving toward the interstate with a packed bag and fake identification. After her arrest, Agent Castellanos explained that Tracy had planned to kidnap Emma and assume her identity to flee the country. She had been studying Emma's appearance and behavior for weeks. The attempted kidnapping added serious charges, including conspiracy, child endangerment, and attempted identity theft, and finally convinced my parents that Tracy was not a misguided relative but a dangerous criminal. When agents arrested Tracy outside the city, they found detailed plans for a new identity in Mexico, along with Emma's birth certificate, social security card, and passport. Tracy intended to cross the border as Emma, leaving my real daughter to face the consequences. Faced with overwhelming evidence, my parents cooperated fully with investigators. Business records showed how Sunset Lawn Care had been used to launder money through fake services. My parents admitted they believed they were helping Tracy cover gambling debts, not participating in an ongoing criminal operation. My mother, devastated, acknowledged that she had chosen to believe Tracy's lies instead of trusting Emma. Their cooperation provided critical evidence and exposed the full extent of Tracy's manipulation. Emma's vindication came from multiple sources. Insurance investigators determined Tracy had been driving during the accident based on phone records and physical evidence. Police formally apologized and cleared Emma's record. The local newspaper published a correction, and Emma's school and community issued apologies. Teachers, classmates, and counselors acknowledged their mistakes, and the insurance company not only replaced Emma's car, but also issued a $45,000 settlement for the fraudulent claims against her driving record. More importantly, Emma's honesty was finally recognized, and justice began to take shape. They entered Tracy into a national database designed to prevent her from manipulating insurance claims in the future. Once Tracy realized how extensive and conclusive the evidence against her was, her federal case moved forward rapidly. She was charged with money laundering, insurance fraud, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, child endangerment, and identity theft. Rather than face a trial that could have resulted in a life sentence, she accepted a plea agreement. The judge sentenced Tracy to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 5 years. During the sentencing hearing, the judge emphasized Tracy's betrayal of family trust and her deliberate targeting of a minor as serious aggravating factors that justified the maximum sentence allowed under the plea deal. The court noted that Tracy chose to harm her own family members, including a 16-year-old girl who had trusted her completely. Judge Patricia Morales stated, "This case reflects not only criminal conduct, but a profound moral failure that caused lasting psychological harm to a child. My parents received 2 years of probation and were ordered to pay $89,000 in restitution to federal authorities. Due to their age and cooperation with investigators, they avoided prison time. They also used their home as collateral to establish a college fund for Emma as additional restitution for their role in her victimization. We cannot undo the pain we caused Emma by choosing to protect Tracy instead of the truth," my father told the judge. "But we can spend the rest of our lives trying to rebuild Emma's trust and support her future in whatever way she allows." The federal investigation also resulted in the arrest of 12 other individuals connected to Eduardo Torres's money laundering network, including several people Tracy had manipulated into participating without fully understanding what they were doing. Emma's determination to tell the truth helped expose a criminal organization operating across 4 states and affecting dozens of families. 6 months after Tracy's sentencing, Emma and I had settled into a new routine that felt both familiar and very different from life before the car accident. Emma returned to her job at Scoop's Ice Cream, where her manager promoted her to shift supervisor and raised her hourly wage from $9 to $12, recognizing how responsibly she handled the crisis. Emma demonstrated more maturity and integrity during her legal ordeal than many adults show under normal circumstances. Her manager explained, "If she can remain calm and honest under that level of pressure, she can handle anything this job brings." Emma's grades not only returned to her previous straight A level, but her GPA actually improved as she focused on her studies with renewed determination. She enrolled in advanced placement courses in criminal justice and psychology, inspired by her experiences with Detective Morrison and Agent Castellanos. "I want to understand how people like Aunt Tracy think," Emma said, when she signed up for forensic psychology, not to excuse her actions, but to help families recognize manipulation before it destroys relationships. Emma also started a peer support group at school for teenagers who had experienced family betrayal or legal challenges. The group began with Emma and 2 other students and grew to 12 regular members who met weekly to share experiences and support one another. It helps to talk with people who understand what it feels like when adults you trust make harmful choices, Emma told me after one meeting. Some have parents struggling with addiction. Others have relatives who committed crimes. We all know what it's like to love someone who caused us pain. My relationship with Emma grew significantly throughout this experience. She later explained that my silence at the crash scene initially confused and hurt her. However, watching me carefully and methodically build a case against Tracy taught her the value of strategic thinking over emotional reactions. I learned that protecting someone you love sometimes means making painful decisions in the moment to ensure justice in the long term. The community's response to Emma's vindication was overwhelmingly supportive. Her friend Katie organized a fundraiser that raised $3,200 to replace everything Tracy had taken from Emma's bank account, with donations from classmates, teachers, and local business owners who followed the story in the newspaper. The high school principal issued a public apology for the harassment Emma endured and implemented new policies addressing cyberbullying related to student legal cases. We learned that students were spreading rumors based on incomplete information, Principal Johnson said during an assembly. Emma's case showed us that supporting students means withholding judgment until facts are known. Rebuilding my relationship with my parents required time and effort. Family therapy helped us work through the complex emotions tied to their decisions. They truly did not realize they were involved in money laundering, but they had chosen to protect Tracy instead of Emma when forced to decide. We failed Emma when she needed us most, my mother admitted during therapy. Our love for Tracy clouded our judgment about right and wrong. My father struggled longer, but eventually acknowledged that his threats to cut me out of their will were attempts to pressure me into protecting Tracy. I was afraid of losing Tracy to prison and losing our house, he admitted. Fear made me protect assets instead of people, and that was wrong. Emma chose to maintain a relationship with my parents on her own terms. She visited them weekly for dinner, but made it clear that rebuilding trust would require years of consistent actions that put her well-being first. I love my grandparents, Emma told me, but loving someone doesn't mean accepting choices that hurt others. Trust is rebuilt through changed behavior, not by pretending nothing happened. The financial restitution from Tracy's case and my parents' civil settlement ensured Emma had enough funds for 4 years of college and potentially graduate school. More importantly, the experience gave her clarity about her career goals and a mature understanding of how legal systems protect victims. I used to think justice meant punishing bad people, Emma reflected while planning college visits. Now I see justice as restoring victims and educating communities so these crimes don't keep happening. Detective Morrison continued mentoring Emma through her senior year, teaching her basic investigative methods and how evidence is analyzed. Emma's final project for her criminal justice class was a detailed analysis of her own case, which she presented to classmates as an example of how family-based financial crimes operate. Emma has turned her victimization into education, Detective Morrison noted. She understands how sharing her story can help others recognize warning signs early. The most meaningful recognition came when Emma received the Student Courage Award from the State Attorney General's office. For her role in exposing Tracy's criminal network, the award honors students who show exceptional bravery in reporting crimes or assisting investigations. Emma Brennan proved that integrity and courage are not defined by age, Attorney General Williams said at the ceremony. Her commitment to the truth led to the exposure of a criminal organization affecting families across several states. As Emma prepared for college, she reflected on the lessons from our family crisis. She learned that people she trusted could make deeply hurtful choices, but also that others would step forward to support her when she needed it most. The most important lesson, Emma said while packing, is that family loyalty should never come at the cost of truth and integrity. Real bonds are strengthened by honesty. Driving past the oak tree on Maple Street became a monthly ritual during Emma's senior year. She placed a small plaque there reading, "In memory of blind trust, in celebration of earned trust." It reminded us that trust should be built through consistent actions over time. I used to think questioning family meant I didn't love them enough, Emma told me during one visit. Now I know accountability is how we show respect. Looking back, I realized that Tracy's crimes ultimately made Emma and me stronger as a family. We learned to communicate openly, trust each other's judgment, and prioritize truth over comfort. This was painful and frightening. Emma said before leaving for college, "But it taught us that you will fight for me even when it's hard, and I will tell the truth even when it makes life more difficult." The final chapter of Tracy's story came when she was transferred to a federal prison in another state. She never attempted to contact Emma or apologize, which Agent Castellanos explained was common among offenders who never accept responsibility. "Some people commit crimes out of desperation," he said. "Others believe they are entitled to take what they want. Your sister falls into the second group, and change is unlikely." Emma found peace by focusing on the positive outcomes. Her school support group continued to grow, and Detective Morrison hired additional staff to manage the increase in family-based financial crime cases reported after Emma's story became public. "We can't control bad actions," Emma said before leaving for college, "but we can control how we respond and use our experiences to help others." As Emma began her freshman year studying criminal justice, she carried a deep understanding of how legal systems function, how families can both support and harm, and how individual courage can lead to broader change. "I want to help families like ours," she told me during a phone call. "Families who love each other but need help understanding the difference between loyalty and enabling." Our story eventually became a case study used by the FBI to train agents investigating family-based financial crimes. Emma participated as a victim advocate, explaining how these crimes uniquely affect children and teenagers. "When someone you love victimizes you, it makes you question your judgment about people," she told trainees. Reflecting on everything, I realized Emma's integrity taught me as much about courage as my guidance taught her about patience. She refused to compromise her principles, even when it would have been easier. "The most valuable thing you can give children isn't money," I said to Marcus Williams after Emma's first year of college. "It's confidence in their moral judgment and the courage to act on it." Emma's story continues to inspire families facing betrayal from trusted relatives. She speaks at community events about recognizing financial abuse and supporting those who report crimes committed by family members. Justice isn't only about punishment, she tells audiences. It's about restoration and education so harm isn't repeated. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right? Sometimes those we love most test our principles the hardest. Emma's decision to insist on the truth, even when standing alone, protected her future and others who might have become Tracy's next victims. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who may need encouragement to choose truth over comfort. Like this video if Emma's courage inspired you. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, and comment below about a time you stood up for what was right, despite pressure to stay silent. Thank you for listening to our family's story. I hope Emma's example reminds you that real love means accountability, not acceptance of harmful behavior, and that strong families are built on honesty and earned trust rather than blind loyalty.